But we have reached 2:31, so we are into our next session. And this session, everyone, is called Navigating Sensitive Money Conversations in Higher Ed Classrooms from Intuit for Education. My name is Rob Phelan. I am not an Intuit for Education employee. I'm actually a high school personal finance teacher in Maryland. I have my own business called Phi Educator, where I create exciting, engaging, and educational resources for personal finance classrooms. And I was approached to do this particular conversation with you all because I am a big fan of the Intuit for Education FinSights cards and doing money conversations with my students. And I think they saw one of my posts, like, oh, you use our stuff, like you like our stuff, like why don't you come talk about it? I was like, you know what? I'd love to do that. I'd love to share this particular resource with you. It's something I use myself. I think it's a great one to start great conversations with your students. And one of the purposes in doing that is just getting students comfortable talking about money. And when I say students, it could be college, it could be high school, it really could be any age. But we want to get students thinking about money and talking about money as something that's not controversial, it's not taboo, it's not shameful, embarrassing, all of those things. We want it to be normal because if we can talk about money in a normal way and ask questions, we're immediately going to seek better information and we're going to get better outcomes when we do run into trouble because we're not going to feel afraid to talk about it. All right. So, our overview of what today's session is going to look like. We're going to get a clear sense of what money conversations are going to look like in your classroom, why they're a little tricky sometimes to get started with, and how you overcome that and get to be something that students are comfortable with. I'm going to show you the tool, the FinSights cards, for how you can kind of foster these conversations and make it much easier to get students involved in this. And then you're going to get that strategy for using as soon as you can. I was going to say tomorrow, but hopefully not all of you are teaching tomorrow. This may be for August, maybe for September, or it could be for summer school or whatever you are teaching. But hopefully you have a time and a place where you can use this with your students. All right, in the chat, what is a money rule you grew up with? You only get one line. So, really quick, you can interpret that rule word whatever way you want. But what's a rule that you have about money that comes from your childhood, something that you grew up with? So, we got save, never tell anyone, never tell anyone how much you earn. 10% goes to a tithe. Okay. Buy what you can afford. Save, 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 save. Save 10%, pay your bills on time. Ooh, don't trust the banks. Spend later, save now, pay yourself first. You guys have lots of good money lessons. Any rules that weren't so good that you grew up with that you had to unlearn? Would love to know some of those too. Money doesn't grow on trees. I love it when students come back and like, yeah, but money's paper and paper comes from trees. Then I have to be like, no. What is money actually made of? And that's a great trivia question. Anyone know the answer to that? What is money actually made of? Are paper money? Cash is king. So yeah, you can see the answer popping in the chat there if you didn't know it. So our money is mostly cotton. Bad phrase. You only live once, hence spend now. Why save for tomorrow when you can spend today? Debt doesn't follow you after you pass away. Bad advice. Yeah, some of the bad stuff like avoid debt at all costs. Like we know, I mean, that's again, is that a bad one or not? It's hard to know. Being a personal finance teacher, I'm kind of like, I see the need for a credit score to access cheaper credit later to maybe save yourself money in the future. But there's certainly an argument to be made for no debt. All right, some great answers in there. Thank you all so much. Okay, so the rules we share. Where does money come from? How are they learned? And are they always helpful? So, like when we do this in my classroom, we do an activity called My Money Story. And I do this at the very beginning to try and get students to just share a little bit more about how they came about the beliefs and values that they have about money. Because we know teaching personal finance, everybody's coming in with something. It's not like when I go step into a math classroom and I'm like, you know what? Chances are 99.9% of you do not know anything about trigonometry before we start this lesson. But when it comes to money, there's such a huge variety of experiences, and knowledge is in quotation marks because most of it is beliefs and values and what they think about money. There's kind of very few, I think, hard, solid, true rules that we have to follow that apply to everyone in the same way. So we need to learn more about what those are for all of our students, how it fits into their view of the world, and then how we're going to approach our lesson that day based on what the students already know, think, and believe about money. So, where did those lessons come from? And then, do they help us or not? Okay, so I'm just like checking the chat really quick to make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's move it on now. So, the money conversations that are going to be unique and why these conversations are special in our classrooms. So, money is more than just math. We know that. It's so much more about beliefs, values, and the decision making that we're going to make. And how do we improve the quality of our decision making? We need to have more conversations with others about it so we can learn from that shared experience. Because if all you're ever learning from is your own experience, that's going to take you a very long time. And I think as most of us as teachers are like, one of the reasons we teach this is so that we can share those bad decisions and experiences we had in our 20s and try and get the next generation to not have those same poor decisions or experiences that we had and try and make life a little bit easier and smoother for them along the way. Same thing with our own kids. We want that ride to be a little bit smoother and more straightforward. They'll find their own issues and their own challenges that they'll pass on to the next generation. But for most of us, if we don't ever have those conversations, how will they ever know? How will they ever learn from that experience? So we want to add to what students already have. We want to share what we have, and we want them to share with each other as well. Okay, so let's look at how a single question can open a window into students' relationship with money. So, what I want to know what your questions are before we start. What's a question that you could ask to your students that would generate an amazing conversation about money? Because again, this is where that conversation part comes in. You all have amazing experiences. You've been teaching this a long time. What's a question that you've thrown out to your students, or a prompt or a phrase or something that has generated one of the best conversations you've ever had in your classroom about money? Now, yeah, when you're done typing, look at that chat. So, what's your financial goal? What salary are you worth? What a great question. How do you put a dollar amount on your time? What conversations have you had with your parental figures regarding money? First money memory? Yes. What's the salary for your career? Starting salary in particular? Yep, that will always get a good buzz going when we start researching that. Family question beginning. Yep. Oh, I like this one. What happens with your body the moment you hear the word money? I ask a similar question in that my money story activity that I do with my students. I ask them, what color represents money to you? And that in itself is just a conversation starter. Like, you chose purple. Why purple? You chose red. Why red? Green. Okay. Why? And some it's very surface levels, like, well, money dollars are green. And for others, it's like, oh no, it's like a black or a red because it's scary, it's angry, it's all these emotions that pop up when we think about money. How much do you want to make a year? Love that one. Did your family show you how to budget? Do you have regular discussions about family finances? Great question. For us adults in the room, what do you think is the appropriate amount to share with your kids or your family members about your finances? That will always generate a good conversation. What recent purchase do you regret making? We're going to talk about that one later. Um, we talked about playing games in our last session, or I was in a different track, but we were talking about money games. And there's one from NGPF Spent where, like, they go through an entire month with $1,000 and they try and make it stretch the entire way. And after we're done, I'm like, what feelings came up for you while we played that game? And so many of them are stressed out of their minds about it. They're like, that was really hard. I had to make some really hard decisions. Like, how do I decide between going to my kid's birthday event or going work an extra shift, or I had to smash my kid's piggy bank? That feels terrible. Like, why would anyone ever do that? And those are just such great conversation openers. And your job then as the teacher is going to be like, how do I become a conversation facilitator? How do I let conversation flow? And we're going to talk some tactics for that today as well. Oh, Caleb, what happened to our slides?
Um, Justin's gonna help us out. There we
Oh,
go.
no worries. I've lost control though. What does the word finance mean to you currently? Yes. What's the value of a dollar? Um, if you had unlimited money, what would you do with it? Like those are all amazing conversation questions that we can have. So I want to introduce to you now um, what these FinSight cards are going to look like. And this is an example of a FinSight card. What is your first memory of using money or your earliest money memory? So, like, when you think back as far as you can go, like at what age were you when you have some memory tied to money? And you can take that a lot of different ways. So, like, it can be a time you saved for something and bought something. It can be a trip you went on, something that had an expense attached to it. But you don't necessarily have to share this if you don't feel comfortable. But if you do, by all means, please put it in the chat. But what is your first memory of using money? For me, I would say I remember being a kid and wanting, gosh, what was it I wanted? Oh, um, my dad took me to visit one of his friends who was a model train enthusiast. And so his entire basement was covered in model trains. And to me, this was the coolest guy in the world because I was probably like 6 years old at the time. I was like, wow, this guy's got an entire basement full of electric trains. This is crazy. It's amazing. Looking back as an adult now, I'm like, that was an interesting hobby and filling your house with trains. But kudos, you got to do something you loved. Anyways, I went home on fire about being a train enthusiast now myself, and I was like, I want to buy one of those train sets. And my dad, to his credit, knew they were expensive. And instead of shutting it down and being like, no, you're not having that, you're not old enough, it's too expensive, whatever it is, he's like, okay, like let's go see how much it is. So he found this train shop somewhere in New York that we were where we were living, and it was like $150. And so we went home and we're like, okay, you got to save. If you want to buy this thing, you can save for it. You can buy it yourself. Like I'm not buying it for you. So I saved $150. I'm gonna say I was like maybe 7 years old, and I did it by collecting bottles and cans from neighbors because I was living in New York at the time, so where you could trade those in for like a quarter or 5 cents or 10 cents, whatever it was. And yeah, I would go around my block and collect my neighbor's recycling, trade it in, get the money, and I saved up $150 and I bought that train set. And guess what? I didn't play with it very often because who wants to see a train go around a loop more than 10 times? So that thing went into our attic and goes around, I think, my parents' Christmas tree every year. But great lesson in terms of, yeah, saving for it, working for it, reaching a savings goal, and then also that looking back with regret as to like, oh, I spent a lot of money on something that I didn't really consider the full value of that purchase. Was it really worth it? Probably not. But it's a good core memory for me. Taught me to work for money and like that I could create my own money. So there was lots of great lessons embedded in there too. But that's probably my early money memory. But yeah, looking back at you guys, like there's some great stuff in there too. And thank you very much for sharing. And that's something that you want to do as well when you're facilitating these conversations with your students is you want to make it okay to not share. You want to say if you feel comfortable, I would love to hear what you have to say, or give me a thumbs up, middle down, give me a score out of 10 as to how you feel about this, like different ways that you can come in from a side door versus a front door for talking about money. Because for a lot of students, it will bring up feelings of anxiety, shame, embarrassment, like the things that have culturally been coached into us about finances. And we want to be respectful that every student situation is going to be different and there may be situations that we're unaware of and we don't want that coming out into light without the student being fully ready to share that. So a student's eagerness to comply with what a teacher's asking, battling with not wanting to share family information can sometimes come into conflict with each other. We want to make it okay to not share if they don't feel comfortable doing that. And then if they do share, making sure that we normalize it, we set that culture around We are going to hear a lot of different opinions. We're not going to say that anyone's opinion is right or wrong. You can ask questions, you can come in with curiosity, but at no point do we ever put someone down for something that they've shared in this classroom. And creating that culture of openly sharing, respecting each other's opinions, and valuing each other's opinions is really, really important if you are going to foster a space where students can have these conversations with each other. All right. So some of the real answers that Intuit threw into these slides here, which I loved, going with my mom to the bank to deposit her check. So, getting the lollipop when I was there. Grandparents keeping cash under the mattress, thinking that everyone did that. They had this hoard of cash in their house. Rushing to the bank after school to so after school let out so mom could cash her check on time. So not realizing maybe at the time that that was an odd behavior potentially or a normal thing to do, cashing checks versus them getting direct deposited, or people who are turning checks into cash and then using that cash to buy everything. There's lots of things that go on in our lives that we just take for granted as being normal until we have these conversations with other people and we're like, wait, you guys didn't do that? No? Okay. Counting up coins for a piggy bank with a sibling. So yeah, just that playing with money when you were a kid. Lots of things that can pop up here. I see the chat finding a penny when you were five, and my dad making me enter it on a ledger to keep my account balanced. Yeah, it's some of us have very different experiences with money growing up, and I love hearing those. Like again, I didn't have any formal money education. Like my parents never really took the time to sit down and talk to me about money. And I asked questions. I remember being like probably 9 or 10 and asking my dad about stocks. No idea where I heard about it or why, but asking about it. And my dad not being able to answer that question and kind of like distracted with something else. So like I feel like I had the opportunity to get investing at a very young age, and I didn't have the parental knowledge slash support to do that. And that's very normal for our families. Like not everyone knows what they're talking about. In fact, as I think I saw a recent poll that our financial literacy knowledge is going down instead of up, that we're now at like 49% of adults can pass a financial literacy exam. But anyways, our FinSights cards. Now, these are the ones that Dan was teasing earlier today. These are conversation starter cards that are a wonderful resource. I picked up packs of these when I met Intuit for Education at the Council of Economic Education Conference, or the national conference. And I saw them and picked them up. I was like, it's a freebie off a table. I'll take a look at it later. Took it back to my students, and I was like, oh man, these are actually wonderful. The conversation starter questions, the prompts are really well written. The ones on screen you can't see, but what I'm talking about, but they are all color coded as well. So they are color coded by topic. So you can say like, all right, everyone, I want you to pull up cards that have a blue dot on it because all of those are to do with credit, and we might be in our credit unit. So, draw cards until you find one with a blue dot, discuss that question, and then we'll come back together. Or a red dot for investing or whatever they end up being. So you can have conversation starters that are tailored to specific units as well, which I really love. But they're a free and easy to implement resource. You can see the link down there for the FinSights cards. And I'll show you an example of what they look like as well, because that was something that was missing earlier. Is just like, what do the physical cards look like? And I have a picture of it that's an Instagram post. And I apologize if you do not have Instagram. This was the only picture I could find that I took of it. But if you click on the link in the chat, you'll see what they actually physically look like. So they're a set of playing cards. And on one side, you can see the dots that are at the bottom, and you have a card in the set that will tell you, the coding for which dots mean what. But how I use them is I just put a deck out on groups of 4 students. So like I have my students sitting in pods, and you can just have them draw until they find the color you're looking for, or like, hey, pick 5 cards that you're going to talk about together as a group over the next 10 minutes, and then come together as a class afterwards. Does anybody feel comfortable sharing what conversations you have, what that look like? What did you guys talk about? Did anything surprise you? So like really good kind of prompts to throw in there as well. And yes, there will be a link at the end of this presentation to request your free deck. So that will be a survey that you will fill out, Survey Monkey survey. All right, so what makes us ready to have sensitive conversations about money with our students? We're going to explore that idea now. So, letting students know that there is no right answer. Their personal finance is personal. It's one of our favorite quotes to throw out there when we're talking about money. Let them know there is no right or wrong here. There is only opinions, experiences, and ideas. And what's really important as humans, and particularly as young adults entering the world, is that you are always allowing for your own beliefs, values, and knowledge, in quotation marks, about money or any topic to be flexible and malleable. That like you're allowing new information to come in, you're reevaluating what you know, you're adding it to the knowledge that you have, and then saying, okay, this is now what I believe about this thing. And if we could train everybody to be open-minded about new information coming in and changing our beliefs and values, I think we would have such an amazingly educated population, both in personal finance and in so many other ways too. Not avoiding the hard moments. So hard conversations. How do we approach those? Modeling that for your students. So when something pops up, and I'm sure if I asked you guys in the chat, like when's a moment that came up that you're like, oh, that's deep, that's heavy, that's hard. What did you say in that moment? Or did you brush it off? Did you go deep into it? So like, how would you approach that? So when a student brings up a hard conversation, like what would you do? And for me, like that sometimes has looked like, students sharing that they're homeless, students sharing that they are using food stamps, or um, I had one share that their house burned down a month ago and that they were currently living in a hotel. And she was really enthusiastic about talking about the insurance process because that was a very hot topic at the table at that time. So we were able to say, okay, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's make sure that we are talking about how insurance works and what the process would look like. And sometimes it's equipping the kid with the information to go home to their parents about it. I find that particularly true in maybe families where English is not the first language spoken, and sometimes the kid is the interpreter for their family. It makes them very aware of what their family finances are, and it puts them in that position of having to have everything go through them. So sometimes they feel like they need help, and they're getting that help from our classroom as well. And then we talked about the safety that this conversation can happen. So being respectful of people sharing, welcoming sharing, and trying to keep any put downs, at a bare minimum, and like just having those rules in place, that culture of how we're going to talk about finances in this classroom. And if you can display it, even better. Like have your classroom norms and procedures and culture around sharing displayed somewhere in the room so you can always refer back to it and be like, hey, remember we talked about this? When someone shares something, we can ask questions, we can be curious about it, but we don't shoot it down. We don't disrespect or put down the person who has shared it. We welcome sharing in this classroom. All right, so we are going to try our own money conversation moment. So I'm going to give you a prompt, or actually, I'm going to give you three prompts. You can choose whichever prompt feels most comfortable to you all. Now, this is going to be a little hard because I'm throwing you into a breakout room without any leader necessarily elected for that room. But I want you guys to, if possible, unmute yourselves. If not, get in the chat. If you can't do either of those things, because as I said in my last group, I'm imagining some of you are sitting on the beach right now and like your hands are full of sand and like trying to type on your phone or computer is just not viable right now. That's totally fine. Or you're driving, be a fly in the wall, listen. But for those of you who are able to take part, I would love to see you take part in this. Choose the prompt that you want to talk about and then have that discussion as a group. So if one person can just read the prompt out or say like, hey guys, which prompt do you want to talk about? A, B, or C? Let everyone answer in the chat. Like, okay, we've seen B is the most common one. This is what the prompt is, and open discussion. Who feels willing to share something about it? And then let's see what comes back to us. All right, we are ready to go into our breakout room. Your prompts, there's three cards here, and these are all Finsights cards. First one is, have you ever made a money decision you wish you could change? What would you do differently? Second one, do you think having more money leads to more happiness? Why or why not? And the third one is your first memory of using money. So if you'd like to go back to that comfortable question, you are more than welcome to, since we've already kind of talked about it a little bit. But if you'd like to explore one of the other two, by all means. All right, let's get our breakout rooms going. Can we put about 8 to 10 people per room, please, so that there's enough active participants that we can have conversations? And let's go for 4 minutes. All right, everybody, as you are coming back in, I am sorry for having to cut your conversation short. I'm sure there were some great ones going on, but I want to make sure we have time to close out before the next session starts. All right, so I see our room is repopulating. I know people are still jumping back in. Let's give them a second. So, welcome back from your breakout room. I am sorry for the shortness of that. Hopefully, you're having a great conversation. If not, no worries, but let's see if we can try and do that maybe in our own personal lives this week. Like, let's pull up somebody, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a friend, and be like, "Hey, let's have a money conversation." Just like we say to our students. In class today, in my session today, we were talking about earliest money memories, and I'm just curious, what was yours? It's always nice to have that intro from school or from class or from somewhere else that you can be like, hey, like let's talk about this thing with somebody else. And there's a reason that I'm bringing this up other than just I'm being nosy or curious or any of those things that could pop up. All right, welcome back from our rooms.
Always.
Oh, okay. All right. So, final takeaways. Money conversations are personal, and the goal is space, not resolution. We are creating that space where people can feel comfortable and confident having conversations about money so that they start to feel like it's normal. And if we can do that, we're going to create a generation of people who go into the world and will talk about it when they're having trouble. And that's really what it comes down to is that when we reach those tough points, when we find ourselves stuck, something bad happening, that we have somebody to turn to other than ChatGPT. Because I mean, that's already turning out to be a great source of information at times, still not 100% reliable. But if we can talk to others in our space, someone we feel comfortable with, we're going to get better information. We're going to make better decisions and we're going to avoid a lot of those problems that plagued the generations that came beforehand. All right, so if you are interested in getting those FinSci cards for your classroom, there's an online version available, which you can just have students pull up and use. But there's also the physical cards, and you can request copies of those physical cards using the QR code or that SurveyMonkey link, which we can also put in the chat for you. And you can see it already popping up there a couple of times as well. So request your cards, get them into your classroom, and if you can't find those, use the digital ones. Caleb, is there a printable version available still?
The digital and the physical ones are the ones I'm aware of. I do think you can actually print from the digital version though, if you want to. So
There
up
used
to
to be a
you.
PDF version available that was easy to print. I don't know. I couldn't
Yep.
find it when I was looking for it, but I don't know if it still exists or not. But yeah, the digital is really nice because it just looks like flashcards that you can slide through and you can filter by topic as well, which is really nice.